In this video, we're going to cover how to set up your packages and libraries to use Go modules. We're going to start with a pre-1.0 library that does not have Go modules. We're going to add Go modules to it, bring it up to V1, and then bring it up to V2. And in doing so, I'm going to show you how to not break backward compatibility with those who aren't yet using Go modules or who have to still use tools like Deps and Glide for legacy reasons. Let's first start by taking a quick look at the project we're going to be adding modules to. Very simple little project. I put it on GitHub, so obviously I can pull it down. So it has a Git folder in it. But the only other file it has is a version.go file. And as you can see here, all that declares is, well, a version. Now let's look at the application we're going to use to make sure we can use Go modules with our new package. It's very simple. It's just a main file that imports vgo test and then prints off the version. And if we were to run this, you can see we get 001. Okay, so to add Go module support to our app, we first have to turn on Go modules. So I'm going to set my Go 111 module to on, my environment variable. There are 3 states you can set this to: on, off, and auto. I don't particularly like auto. It's very confusing. If you're in the Go path and you have yours set to auto, it will not use Go modules even if there is a Go mod file in the package you're trying to use. It'll only work with auto if you're outside your Go path. So I prefer to use set my Go modules to on all the time. That way I'm always using Go modules regardless of where I am. So I've set that, and now all I need to do to add support here is to do go mod init. And you can see that it's created a new file here, and if we open go mod, you can see that it's very simple, just module github.com/markbatesvgo. That is my project. So I'm going to commit this here. Let's first see it. Okay, we're going to add that file. I'm also going to go run go mod tidy first. And what go mod tidy will do is it'll just make sure that any imports I'm using are nice and tidied up in my files. I don't have any imports, so that's fine. So I'm going to add my go mod file here. I'm going to say add go mod, save it, and I'm going to push it up to GitHub. Okay, now I'm going to go back to my app and start using Go modules within it. And to do that, again, I'm going to make sure I set my Go modules to on, and I'm going to run go mod init again so that I get a Go mod for my application. And we can see that here. It doesn't currently have any imports. But if I run go mod tidy, you can see it's now going to go to GitHub, find vgo test, it's going to download it, and add it to my Go module file. And we can see that if I open up my Go module file here, you can see it's got my module name, and it has a require statement, importing vgo test, and it has this weird pseudo version. This is because I don't have any versions tagged yet in GitHub. So what it's going to do is it's going to kind of take whatever the last version known was. In this case, there is no version, so 000. And then it's going to tack on the date and time and the SHA of the commit so that Go modules now has the information it needs to properly build and compile this library here. And if I run go run main.go, you can see it still says 001. So now let's change our version number to 002, and we will recommit that. I'll say upgrade version, and we'll push that up. And now let's go back to my app here, and let's run it again. Go run main.go. Still says 001. And that's because Go modules is looking at our Go mod file and using that very particular version. If we want to get a new version, we can do go get-u. In this case, we'll update all of our stuff, and in this case, that's fine. We only have one requirement. And if I were to run my app again now, you see I get v2, or 002. And if I were to go back to look at my Go module file here and reload it, you can see that the date and time in SHA has changed. So now let's go to GitHub and tag a new release for our application here. And I'm going to tag it as V002 because that's where we should be currently up. Oops. There we go. And now let's go back and do a go get -u. Oops, wrong app. Here we go. Into our regular application here. We'll do a go get -u again. And now you can see it says it's downloading V002. And if I were to go back here and reload my Go mod file, you can see now it's using the tag of V002, what we just tagged in GitHub. Now let's change this to 3 and recommit it. There we go. And push that back up. Oops. Push that back up to GitHub. And we'll go back to our app again. And again, we'll do go get -u and let's see what happens. Nothing at all happened. And if I were to reload my Go module file, that is because we have now tagged a release. We have tagged 002, and Go modules will only use the tagged release. You'd have to tell it to do something different. Now, we're not going to get into that right now. Instead, I want to take this up to V1. So let's change our version to 1.0.0 here. And then let's upload that. V1, that's good enough. Commit, push that up. We'll go back to GitHub. We will create a new release, V1.0.0. And then again, we'll go back to our app. We will do go get -u. And this time you can see we have got version 1.0. And if we run that, we get what we expect, 1.0.0. So now let's upgrade our app to V2. This is where people make the most mistakes when it comes to Go modules. And that's because of a thing called the semantic import versioning. And that means we have to use a different import path for V2s and above. So let me first show you how you can do it wrong. And it's very, very easy to do wrong. I'm going to show you a couple different ways you can screw it up. So first, I'm going to set this to V2. And with that said, I'm going to commit this here. We're going to call it, V2. I'm going to push that up to GitHub. And I'm going to create a new release. I'll draft a new release here. We'll call it V2.0.0. Now, previously, this is exactly what you would do when you released a version 2, right? Nothing special. I've uploaded version 2 and I tag it. So let's go to our app now again here, and let's run that go get -u again. Nothing happens. What happened to version 2? Excellent question. We don't get version 2 because we have not imported version 2. Go modules requires that we use semantic versioning of our import paths. So what our app really should look like is something like this. Unfortunately, that doesn't exist. And if we were to try and run that, right, we go run main.go. That's going to fail because there is no module that provides that information. And if we do go get -u, you can see it can't find what it needs. So we have screwed up our Go module support for V2 already. Okay, so how do we fix that? Well, I'm going to show you the next thing people do that is also a mistake when you're working with V2 Go modules. We have to change our modules to read V2. This now tells Go that the name of our module is GitHub Markbades vgo test/v2. So again, I'm gonna upload it to GitHub. There we go. Push it up. I'm going to go back to GitHub and create another release. This time V2.0.0.1. Publish that. I probably should have changed the version number, but what are you going to do? Go back to my app again, run go get. Okay, fantastic. So now we're getting what we want. We get v2 here. Perfect, right? Awesome. And if we look at our Go module file, you can see that we actually have vgo test in there twice. Once at v1 and once at v201. So that's partially due to the fact that we imported /v2 in our main.go file here. But previously we had the old version. So the way we can fix that is we can run go mod tidy, and that's going to go and it's going to clean up our Go modules file and just bring us back to the files, the imports we actually need. This is an important step you should run often, and honestly, pretty much every time you do any sort of changes or run the go command at all, I always recommend running go mod tidy. Okay, so we have our project working now with Go modules and v2, so we should be feeling pretty good about ourselves. Okay, so off camera, I created a 202 release just to make sure that the version number was correctly printing off. I'm going to turn off Go modules now in my app. So now I'm going to use a little tool I wrote called Gawker, and what Gawker lets me do is run Go commands in a Go Docker container. In this case, I'm going to use Go version 1.8, and I'm going to run our main.go file again. So you can see when I run it, I get an error, right? Cannot find package, blah, 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 /v2. 1.8 is not capable of handling that information. However, if we go back as far as 1.9.7, and we let Docker do its thing,
Gawker has finished.
we can see that the app runs successfully, and that's because in Go 1.9.7, they added support to Go to read module files even if you're not using Go modules, because Go 1.9 does not support modules. So we can see that we have a working 1.9.7 and greater application, but 1.8 fails. It also fails if we try to do a dep init. And you can see here I get all sorts of errors because dep doesn't work with Go module files, and like 1.8, it can't resolve the /v2 path. So now at this point you have a decision to make. And the decision is, do you want to support only those who can use Go modules in Go 1.9.7 and later? Or do you want to be able to support people who use both Go modules and those who can't use Go modules? And I say can't because a lot of companies do not allow experimental code to be used. And Go modules is still experimental. If you're a Fortune 500 company that maybe is the largest payment processor in the world, are you going to use an experimental package manager? Probably not. Are you going to use something like Dep or Glide that's been around for a lot longer? Probably. Or you might even be stuck on an old version of Go, a 1.8. for example, or where Go modules are not an option. So personally, I like to try to support as many people as possible. So let's look at a few ways that we can fix our v2 to support those people. So one option here would be to use a subfolder to make this work. So I am going to create a new subfolder here called v2. I'm going to copy my version file into it and change my version file to be Go 1.0. But I'm also going to now need to add a Go mod file. So I'm actually going to remove this Go mod file from my root of my directory and put it into my v2 folder. So now the root of my directory does not have a Go module file, so people can still continue to access that as before, but those who want to really use v2 will have to use the v2 subfolder here. So I'm going to add these and commit them. I'm going to call this v210. Push that up. Going to go to GitHub create a new release, draft a new release. We'll call it v2.1.0. Okay, so now let's see how our application works in Go 1.8.
Gawker has finished.
So you can see that now it works, and it works because Go can resolve /v2. It's an actual physical path on disk. And if we do dep init, we've got a bit of a constraint there, but that's fine. If we cat our Go package file here, we can see that we're importing v210. So now dep works. We have a situation where where Go modules, Go dep, and old versions of Go still work. And we can see that here just by making sure our Go modules are on. And I can still run go main.go, but you notice I'm getting the old version because that's what's in our Go mod file. So I'm going to go get -u here just to update that file. And if I run go run main.go, everything is working just fine. So now the upshot of this approach is that you have a physical folder on disk that any version of Go can read and access as long as you're importing with /v2. This works with every single version of Go. It works with dep, it works with Go modules. This is probably the most flexible way that you can add version 2, version 3 support to your packages. However, it's not the only way. I mean, we've already seen one way where we can just edit our Go mod file, but that excludes everybody who wants to use dep and everybody who wants to use an older version of Go. Except this version gives us kind of full compatibility. However, it's not quite as clean. If we go back and look at our folder structure, we have multiple versions of the version.go file. The root, in this particular case, is kind of screwed up because we had originally tagged the root folder as v2, but we screwed that up, so we created the subfolder v2. And so now we've got this weird thing going on, and it can be slightly confusing. What's another approach we can take that still gives us a decent level of support? Well, we can use branches. Now, the problem with this approach is it definitely does not work with older versions of Go, and that obviously is an issue. And so you're going to have to decide whether you want to kind of limit your support to 1.9.7 and above. And if you do, then you can use this approach, definitely, that I'm about to show you. If you still need to support 1.8 and below, then I would definitely recommend the folder solution. But let me show you a solution now that uses branches. So we're going to go over here, and I'm going to create a new branch, and I'm going to call this branch v3. We're going to upgrade our app now to v3. So I'm going to first now that we're in this branch, I'm going to delete that folder. I'm going to change my version number to 300, and I'm going to make sure my Go mod file properly indicates the module as vgotest/v3. So with all that now, I can push all that up to GitHub, and I'm going to go and draft a new release on my v3 branch this time, where I'm going to call it v30. Tag it. Now I can go back to my app. I can go back and make sure I'm now pulling in v3. And if I do go run main.go, this works. So now we have a nice branch with our v3 on it, but it still doesn't work with dep or with older versions of Go. So here, if I remove my Go package files and I try dep init again, it struggles to find version 3. And of course, if I were to run Gawker with version 1.8, we would see a very similar problem. It can't resolve v3. So how do we fix this so that we can use this branch solution to work with all of this? Now, unfortunately, this solution doesn't work with all the things we were talking about. For example, It won't work with Dep. And we can't use the same import URL for older versions of Go because we don't have a physical path on disk called v3. We just have a branch. So one thing we can do, if you're still trying to support old versions of Go and you're all right with them having a different import path, one thing you can do is change your default branch in GitHub here to be v3. So now if we were to look at a repo here, you see it's the v3 branch is our default branch. So this works definitely with Go modules, but doesn't work with, say, 1.8. So if we're okay with using different import paths for 1.8, we can still let them use the non-semantic versioning path, and that will still work, and it's going to get version 3 because its default branch its default branch is the v3 branch, right? So this is a way of, like I said, if you're still trying to keep people who are using 1.8 of Go in the loop, you can do that. And this will work with Dep now because it's a different import path. So we could absolutely do Dep init now, and it'll work. So we just locked in v3. But that's because we're not using a semantic import versioning path. So what we have here now is definitely a problem of two different import paths, one for non-Go modules users and one for Go modules users. And for me, this is a less than optimal solution. I don't like the solution because of that. We can't support everybody with the branches. I do, however, like the branches in that it's clean and easy for people to use. So we've seen what we can do with folders. Folders allow us to do everything we want. We created the v2 folder and everything and everybody was able to access that. So that's great. The downside of that is there's a lot of code in your branch. You might end up with a bunch of folders, duplicate code, and the like. And that's not fun. Right, so that is a downside of using, that's the biggest downside of using the branch approach. The folder approach. The upside of using the branch approach is it's nice, it's clean, it's easy to follow. The downside is, however, we have to support, people have to use two different import paths, and that's no good. Or maybe it is if that's what you want to do. For example, with Buffalo, we struggle with this because we can only support one import path. So we need to figure out ways to make sure that those who are using older versions of Go and those who are using Go modules can work together. So what I'm going to show you now is how we can upgrade a v2 project that doesn't have Go module support, and we can add Go modules to support to it using v3. Okay, so let me show you how to upgrade an existing v2 library to use Go modules. Because it's, as we've seen, there are rules to doing v2, v3 type packages with semantic import versioning paths. So off camera, I kind of deleted this whole repository, recreated it, and tagged the master branch with v2 here. And so that's what we've got, just version.go here, and it's just got v2. And now let's go back to my app here, and let's just quickly look here. Let's just get rid of that random go sum file. And let's see how it behaves under different circumstances. So let's start with 1.8. How does our application work on 1.8?
Gawker has finished.
Works perfectly. What about with without Go modules? Also runs perfectly. Now, if I run this, if I run go run main.go with Go modules, I get an error because we don't have a Go mod file. So let's go mod init, and we can run main.go. And that worked as well. And let's just quickly look at our Go mod file. Now you can see our Go mod file has that pseudo version. And that's because we're not using semantic import versioning. So let's see what happens now if I want to add mod support to this project. Now the first thing we know we got to do is add a module file. So go mod init will do that for us. There we go. And I can look at that file. Great. And we're going to make sure we end it with v2 because we know that's what we have to do. I'm going to now commit that file here, right? Adds mod support. I'm going to push that up. And I'm also going to make sure I change my version number. Actually, let's do 210, okay? And again, just going to commit that file 210. Oops, close enough for rock and roll, but let's do it anyway. Push that up. I'm going to go back to GitHub and I'm going to create a new release. V210. And this, everybody, is probably the biggest mistake that most people do when they add module support to a V2 Plus repo. Module support needs to be a major revision. When you add it, you should absolutely change to a major number unless you are already on version 1 or below. If you are already on version 2 or above, you should absolutely commit a new major version, and let me show you why. So first, I'm going to clear this up here. Again, I'm going to run Gawker version 1.8.
Gawker has finished.
Okay, 1.8 got it right. That's good. And just running Go without modules works. So what happens, I'm going to do go get-u here. And now let's run go run main.go again. Whoa, what happened? What happened to 210? Everybody else got 210. Why did Go modules not get 210? Well, the reason is pretty simple. We're not importing version 2 into our app. We're still just, we're not using semantic versioning here. We're still just asking for the plain repo. In this case, what happens is Go module looks at the repo and says, hey, there is a Go mod file at this version, but you're not asking for semantic import versioning. You're not asking for version 2, so I'm going to give you the latest version of the repo that does not have a go.mod file. And that is incredibly confusing to most people. You would easily sit here for hours trying to figure out why you got 200 and not 210. And the reason is because Go modules ignores every version with the Go mod file unless you specifically ask for V2. So now we have a situation where everything's a bit cockeyed. And we've broken support for the backward compatibility of existing URLs, existing import paths. And everything's kind of a bit screwy. So this was definitely a bad way to go about this. Now we could use our branching techniques or our folder techniques to fix this problem somewhat. But what I would really recommend is when you go to add module support, you add a new version so that this does not happen. So let's see what that will look like. I have screwed all this up, as you know, on purpose. V2 is kind of broken and busted now. Well, at least for module users, it's broken and busted. For non-module users, it's working just fine. So how can we fix this? Well, I suggest that, like I said, you change to a major version, change a complete major rev here, V3. And again, this is, Go module support is big. It's a huge thing, and it should be a major release. Do not add this as a point release. You're adding a major new piece of functionality to your code. Treat it as such. Make it a major version here. So I've got my major version now. In this case, I'm going to do the branch version where I could say check out branch v3. I can look at everything, looks good here. I'm going to commit v3 and I'm going to push that branch up. All right, I'm going to go back to GitHub and draft a new v3 release against the v3 branch. Excellent. And now I'll go back to my main app here. And again, if I run this, I'm still getting that v2. And if I run it without Go modules, now I get v3 because Go is correctly pulling the v3 when I'm not using modules. But to tell this I need to use modules, the v3 modules, I can add v3 to my import path now. And when I run go main.go, I get 3.0. And when I run no go, without module support, I also get 3.0. And again, if I run this with Gawker 1.8, what do we get? It fails because it doesn't know how to resolve the v3 import, but that's fine. Because in this situation, I have said I am fine with v3 not supporting 1.8. That was a conscious decision I just made. And I was able to make that conscious decision because I've completely revved my version to v3. And in doing so, I've created a brand new import URL. For those who want to use v3, have to now kind of change to that import in their app, and which also means that unfortunately 1.8 is no longer available to me. And I'm okay with that in this particular case. And if I were to run this and say 1.9.7, it still doesn't work, but that's okay because what I can do is go back to my settings here and I can change the branch to be the v3 branch. There we go. And if I run 1.9.7 again,
Gawker has finished.
it works. Because Go resolves to the master branch, or whatever the main default branch is. In this case, we switch from master to the v3 branch. So Go can find that branch, it's pulling down that branch, sees the Go mod file in 1.9.7, reads that it's v3, and it works. And of course, like I said, everything works as expected now. So we have gone from a v2 repo without Go modules. We saw what happened when we added Go modules and did not create a new major version. We totally kind of screwed up that release of our branch, of our code. And the correct way to do that was to go straight from that v2 without Go modules to a v3. Because again, Go modules is a major change to your code base, and it should be treated as such with a major release. So just to recap, over this video we saw what it was like to take a pre-1.0 Go package and upgrade it all the way through 1 to 2 with Go modules. We've looked at different ways of dealing with Go modules that add various levels of backward compatibility. The first one we looked at was using folders, and that gave us full backward compatibility with all existing tools and Go versions. The downside, however, is we end up with all these subfolders that potentially have lots of duplicate code. We could do things like use type aliases to point back and to clean up our code. But when we do that, now we're saying we can only use Go 1.9. So if we're going to use Go 1.9 only, well, then we might as well make use of some of the other features that Go 1.9 lets us use with Go modules, particularly the branching scheme. And the branching scheme is nice and clean because it's a branch, right? So we don't end up with a ton of duplicated code. We can still keep backward compatibility with old versions of Go. Dep doesn't quite work as well as we wanted to, at least not in a shared standardized URL format. We can't do /v3, so unfortunately we have to use a different import path if we're using Dep. So that's something to consider. Is whether you're going to support tools like Dep when you're adding Go module support. And finally, we looked at taking an existing 2.0 application, or package rather, adding Go modules to it in the wrong way, and screwing up kind of that entire release. And when I say the wrong way, I'm very adamant that that is the wrong way because Go modules are a major change to your application and should be treated as such. And I keep stressing that point. do not add Go module support to a V2 or above without changing to V3. And honestly, I would even recommend if you're on a V1, maybe consider going to V2 to add Go module support, to indicate that that's where Go modules are, and to indicate that V2 is now 1.9.7 and above. And then you can use the branching strategy as well, which I think is also very, very clean. So a lot to cover there, a lot to take in with Go modules. I didn't particularly talk about how they work on the command line and things you can do with Go modules, and dealing with replace statements and such. Instead, I really just wanted to focus on how you can add module support to your existing libraries or to the new libraries you're creating. So that's it for now. I hope this helps. This video was brought to you by Go for Guides. If you're an organization, conference, or user group that is looking for Go training, please visit goforguides.com. All training is custom designed to match your educational needs.